Okay, we are live with Diabetes 180 and our special guest, Dr. Loomis, and hopefully Caryn's also going to be with us from the Doc and Chef. So we're going to give a few minutes for people to join. Here's Caryn right now, right on time.
All right.
Hola, let's let her in. Let's let her in. All right,
Hi.
hello. Thanks for coming in on to talk with us. Let me
Yeah.
Instagram feed. Give me a second. I try to show this on YouTube and Facebook as well as Instagram. We gotta share the good news every way we can in any way we can, right?
Yes.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
So this is just going to be a great conversation, I think. Talking about the great work you guys are doing for the community. I like to do this as a live. I mean, we could always record this, but I always like to do this as a live, just in case there's people who are watching and have questions and can get the real-time answers. All right. So you guys have a medical doctor and a chef on our live. I mean, it's not very often we get such a blessing. Okay. I want to first basically start off with hearing your stories. What really inspired you to go on this plant-based journey, right? And I know, Caryn, especially, you have a wonderful testimony of healing. And so I'd love for you to share. Before we begin, though, just a few announcements I always give. For our chat room, I'll be watching if you have questions, okay? And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. This is more of a general conversation about health. We don't have a specific topic. Usually we have a specific topic in health, but we're just going to talk about the great work you guys are doing. And so if you guys who are watching have questions for Dr. or Chef, culinary questions about, like how to make a plant-based diet taste good, because if it doesn't taste good, you're doing it wrong.
Right, that's right.
This is your time to ask questions. So before you guys share, starting off, what really began your journey, I want to give guys a little summary of who you are to the people. Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Loomis is a medical director at the Center for Plant-Based Living. He is also practicing lifestyle medicine clinician and the medical director at the Physicians Committee in Washington, D.C. Big jobs, doing some big things. Caryn is a plant-based chef and the founder of the Center for Plant-Based Living in St. Louis, Missouri. Together, Jim and Carey are taking the top nutrition topics and answering all the questions surrounding them in 10 to 20-minute videos on YouTube. If you aren't watching or you haven't subscribed to that channel, look for it. Easy to remember. The Doc and Chef. You guys are addressing really important things like, are we going to waste away if we don't get enough protein?
Yes, you will. You will.
Yeah. Yes. So I like how you address soy. Is soy going to give me man boobs? I mean, really good questions, man.
Right.
That we all want to know. The people want to know. But let's start with you, Caryn. Why don't you share your story? What really started you on this plant-based journey?
Well, I'll condense it. In 2008, I lost my dad to cancer, and exactly 10 days after he passed away, I was diagnosed. So since then, I've had malignant melanoma twice, surgically removed. So, clear as of right now, I think. But the reason I eventually adopted a plant-based diet was because I did a lot of research on what it meant to be healthy. And just, if you're asymptomatic, it doesn't mean that you're healthy, right? So I looked at a lot of different things, and then I started reading medical journals. And went to Dr. Google and was reading medical journals on a plant-based diet. But in 2008, and I'm sitting here in the middle of the country in St. Louis, Missouri, very conservative. Nobody said plant-based, they said vegan, and it held kind of a connotation of cult and all these other things that, aren't true. And I was very resistant because I grew up burger girl, pork chops, grilling on the weekends, the whole nine. So when I was reading medical journals that indicated that certain types of plant-based of vegan diets could potentially shrink some tumors, and that was just for cancer. The things that it could do for common chronic illnesses, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, those kinds of things, reversing that, putting that at bay at least. And So I thought, well, I guess, I could give it a try just for a moment. I could just, check that box and just at least say that I've tried it. And I did, like immediately overnight, just to get on the other side of it because I just thought it was silly. And I found it not. I'll tell you what. I got to tell you. Honest to God, I sucked. I sucked at it. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know what I was doing. It was more trouble than it was worth. I didn't know what to buy. It took too long. I was rehabbing my house. I was really working a full-time job in Western medicine.
Yeah.
Like all the things,
Mhm.
all the barriers. And so I went to a cooking class just to get a few tips, and really was very inspired by the teacher who was making these wonderful dishes very quickly with 3, 4, 5 ingredients. It was a full class. I met a lot of people, and I thought, well, okay, I can do this for a little while longer. It's probably worth it. And then got so inspired, as most people do in this. I'm sure we all know people who've started businesses within this whole plant-based realm because they've turned their health around or they've become so inspired.
Yeah.
And so I got the bug, it bit me, and we were off to the races. That was 2008. 2011, I started my first business, STL Veg Girl, STL for St. Louis. Started cooking classes, or started teaching cooking classes, went to Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine where Jim works. And this was before COVID, so there was not a whole lot of this virtual stuff. I actually went to PCRM and signed up, earned a place. It's not easy to get a place in their Food for Life program. Went there, spent a week there, was taught by all the people there, including Dr. Barnard, and came home with a head full of information. And our cancer support community here in St. Louis actually called me the next week and said, we understand the kind of certifications that we understand the certification you just earned. It's exactly what we're looking for. Can you please come teach classes? And what an honor it was, because I just had cancer. I lost my dad to cancer, and now the cancer support community wanted me to teach. Like it still gives me chills.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. And then I started a meal delivery service, and I started a personal chefing service. And then in 2019, on the anniversary of my dad's passing, I opened up the nation's first and only fully plant-based nutrition and culinary education center, the Center for Plant-Based Living. And that was super fun. Did that for 5 years, COVID. And then along the way, Jim came on board and we started the Doc and Chef. And so we do cooking classes online. We have the free Doc and Chef. All those episodes are online. And we also have a thriving membership. So it's been quite a journey.
Yes, that is amazing. And I love how common this theme is, that out of tragedy comes triumph. Like, it's usually when we get the devastating news, I don't think anything's more devastating than finding out you have cancer, right? And then, right after a family member passes from cancer. I mean, that's scary. I'm sure you were scared.
Oh, I couldn't get out of my own way. It was really awful. Yeah.
And to find that there is hope, right? Beyond Western medicine, and it's just contagious. You gotta share that hope with others. So that's what you, Caryn, and Dr. Loomis are doing. We thank you for that. So Dr. Loomis, why don't you tell us your story too, and then let's go ahead and have you answer a question. What can someone transitioning to a plant-based diet, what's the first thing they can expect to happen with their health if they're looking to get healthier?
Sure. Well, in medical school, just unfortunately the same today. In fact, I graduated medical school 40 years ago this year, and I didn't learn anything about nutrition in medical school. Really, the 1 or 2 nutrition classes we had were really just kind of glorified biochemistry, right? So, this is a protein, this is a vitamin, this is a carb, and here's all the nasty diseases you get when you don't get enough of these things. And so really nothing meaningful. And so when I, finished my residency and went into private practice, I thought eating healthy was just kind of regurgitating the old food pyramid, right? Low fat dairy, lean meat, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, ice cream in moderation. And because that's what I had been told. I mean, that's what I would read. The dietary guidelines would come out, and that's what I would read. And that was the dietary pattern that I followed. low fat dairy, lean meat, fruits and vegetables, and yeah, let me maybe a barbecued pork shoulder on the weekend, or some homemade ice cream. And in 2010, I both fortunately and unfortunately found out that you can't outrun a mediocre diet. I tore my meniscus playing with my dog. I had to wait a few months to get surgery because I was really busy, and then I didn't do the rehab after. So I started to gain weight. I didn't do the rehab after surgery because doctors are terrible patients, and I gained more weight. And in 2011, one morning I woke up and I was in atrial fibrillation. And it turns out with the weight gain, I had sleep apnea, which is a condition where you stop breathing at night. So I lived in St. Louis at the time. My doctors were friends of mine I trained with, world-class doctors from Washington University. Mm-hmm. Not one of them asked me what I had for dinner last night, right? So next thing I know, I'm wearing a CPAP machine at night. I'm on antiarrhythmic pills. I go see my primary care doctor. My cholesterol's through the roof, so I'm on a statin. I have borderline diabetes, borderline blood pressure. I had really become, in my early 50s, the typical patient that I saw every day in my office. And I didn't really know any better. I mean, I just thought, well, sure, I'm on my, I knew where this was headed. The next step off past the statin was going to be metformin, and then it was going to be blood pressure pills. I knew where this was headed. Mm-hmm. One day, my fat rear end literally was laying on the couch, flipping through Netflix, and I came across the documentary Forks Over Knives. It was the song that came out, and I thought, wow, food is medicine. How come no one ever taught me that in medical school? Looked up some of the research, and as Caryn said, even in 2011, was blown away by the breadth and the depth of the research around the health benefits of a plant-predominant diet. Mm-hmm. Literally overnight, went plant-based and made a commitment to rehab my knee. And within about 4 or 5 months, I'd lost like 50 pounds. When I lost the weight, the sleep apnea went away. When the sleep apnea went away, the AFib went away. My cholesterol dropped 100 points off meds. My A1C normalized. My prediabetes went away. My borderline blood pressure went away. I could exercise again. And that, if you look at burnout rates in primary care, it's about 100%. And I was getting there, right? I mean, I've been in practice, 30 years or so. And all of a sudden, because you never help anybody, right? I mean, arguably what I learned in med school was a giant game of whack-a-mole, right? Blood pressure, so we're going to whack it down with some pills.
To the fire, brother.
Yeah, here comes your cholesterol, and here comes your sugars, and on and on. And for the first time in my career, I could really truly help people reverse their diabetes, reverse their high blood pressure, get them off their cholesterol medicine, autoimmune disease. I mean, the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
And the crazy part is, when I turned 60 a few years ago, right before the pandemic, I wanted to do something epic. Mm-hmm. I actually unsuccessfully tried to kill myself by doing Lake Placid Ironman, which I did 2 weeks after I turned 60, which is a 2.4 mile swim and a 112 mile bike, and then you get to run a marathon.
Wow.
So this idea that you can't thrive on plants, even as an athlete, is not true.
Not true.
I don't know if you've seen the documentary Game Changers. I'm in that. In my past life, I was one of the team doctors for the St. Louis Cardinal baseball team and the St. Louis Rams football team, and actually had a ring and a World Series ring, and had been around high performance athletes, for much of my career. I just wish they would have known this. I would have known this back when I was the team doctor. I mean, it's a shame. Yeah. And so anyway, so it completely changed my career path, and moved me and got me interested in lifestyle medicine. Went back and got board certified. I've been working with Caryn, and it's really been such a rewarding path we've been on. Caryn and I, with Doc and Chef, we've literally traveled the world. We just got back from 2 weeks in Eastern Europe. We were in Romania and Moldova, spreading the word about the importance of lifestyle-based diets, including a medicine forum at the Romanian Parliament, where we actually presented. It's really been an incredible journey.
Do you feel like you're I know the answer to this, but do you feel like you found like a newfound joy in medical care?
That's what I was just going to. Yeah, again, I went from 100% burned out to just getting, people say, because I'm about ready to turn 66, and people say, well, when are you going to retire? I'm just getting started here. There's too much work to be done. And I mean, that's how I feel. There's just too much work. And back to your original question, and Caryn can chime in here too, but what are the things people notice the first? I think for me, the first thing I felt was re-energized. The brain fog that I used to get, the chronic fatigue, the lack of energy, all that just kind of went away. And I have some theories. I think part of it's due to get rid of these big sugar swings that we have, when we eat kind of the ultra processed foods, which spike our sugar levels and spike our insulin levels. And a few hours later, your sugar levels are dropping and your body thinks you're starving. And so you need a nap or a donut. I think that's probably the first thing I noticed was just this renewed energy and this the mental clarity. That gas, which in the first couple of weeks, I got that away.
That's powerful. What's better than having mental focus and clarity in mind, right?
Right.
Not just so it goes beyond your health. So I have a question for you, Caryn. And also a question specifically for you, Dr. Loomis, about the barriers or roadblocks. With so much medicine, with so much studies and research, it's out there. We know the benefits of plant-based diet. But, first, Caryn, why do people hesitate, to adopt this diet? Why do you think what's the biggest barrier for people just making the switch?
Well, how much time do you have? It's interesting. Jim and I just wrote, it'll be up for review pretty soon, like this week, a paper on culinary literacy and kitchen confidence. And I've been presenting a talk called Kitchen Confidence for several years at this health immersion where the Jim and I are both on faculty with. And, it's called Kitchen Confidence because a lot of people just aren't confident in what they're doing in the kitchen, right? And especially at night, if you've been at work or school or whatever, busy all day, and you're like, shoot, I just want to throw something together. Oh, forget it. I'm just going to call Grubhub or whatever, so, and if you don't have confidence in you have to work at getting confidence. And when are you going to work at getting confidence? Well, life is busy, So I think that's one barrier. And that includes a lot of different things. There's also, your peers, your family, if they don't want to become plant-based, go vegan, add more plants to their plate, whatever. Well, it's hard, because you don't want to be making 2 to 3 different whatever dishes at night for dinner, because you just want to appease everybody because it's the end of the day and you're just done. There's food deserts, where the food just isn't around. Some people think that there's a financial barrier there because adding more plants to your plate is more expensive, when in reality it's not, if you go for the right things. And there's a lot of right things out there. And what I mean is, don't go for the ultra processed foods. And when people talk about ultra processed foods, that's standard American diet, but it's also vegan and plant-based too. You buy the lunch meats or the processed foods. Well, that can be really expensive because that takes a lot of time, money, and effort to get those fake foods onto the shelf. So buy a bag of lentils, make some greens and some potatoes, and make a great lentil soup. That's going to be a heck of a lot less expensive, easier, and you're going to get a few nights out of it rather than buying, chicken or a steak, right? Or especially eggs now.
Yeah. Have you ever did a video comparing the cost of,
we should do that.
I think it was quite interesting, but I don't know if you guys done that, like comparing a standard American diet cost versus plant-based cost.
That's a great idea.
We should do that as a kid. We should do that as a grocery at the grocery store.
Do that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We went shopping to Walmart. I went to Walmart, and I shopped for my family of 4, and she shopped for a family. I think she had a family of 5. And my grocery bill came out cheaper. And we looked at her shopping cart, and she looked at my shopping cart. It was apparent, just glancing, the difference. The difference was processed foods.
Yeah.
He goes the box cereals, the juices, the
Yeah.
snacks, right? All those things that are not really food. They're not really nutrition. They don't add much nutritional value, but they're cheap, but they add up. When
Yeah.
you go to a plant-based diet, you're eliminating a lot of that junk and also saving money. Yeah.
I think Michael Pollan called those edible food-like substances.
Like that. So,
and you know, when I talk to patients about this, you know, I think one of the big issues here is something we don't talk about, and that's just simple fact: eating is a learned behavior. And once we learn our behaviors around food, we just stop thinking about it. Food you like, food you don't like, triggers to start eating, triggers to stop eating, emotional triggers, environmental triggers. I mean, if you learned, if the environmental trigger you learned to eat white bread is when the waiter puts it on the table at the restaurant, at that moment in time, you have to think about eating the bread or not eating the bread. You have to think about is not eating the bread. And if you're tired of thinking because you had a busy day at work, you're out for what happens to the bread you eat? There's nothing you can do about it. So
decision fatigue. Yep.
So you can change that. You know, for example, driving is another example of a learned behavior that once we learn it, we stop thinking about it. You can get in your car and you know, you don't have to think about putting on the blinker or the brake. You know, your subconscious brain is doing that for us. And there's actually an evolutionary reason for that. When we free up when our subconscious brain takes over these kind of learned behaviors, it frees our conscious mind to look for opportunities and threats. And that's why distracted driving, for example, is dangerous. So you move to London tomorrow, you know, you're gonna have to teach yourself to drive on the other side of the street, right? And it's going to take you 3 to 6 months. Every time you get in that car, you got to think about what side of the road am I on, how the pedestrians come to the crosswalk, how do I go through the roundabout. And then one day it might be 3 months, might be 6 months. That's how you drive. If someone said, you know, do you miss driving on the other side of the street? Well, that's a silly question. I don't drive that way anymore. And I get that question all the time. You know, do I miss barbecued ribs? And the answer is no, because I don't eat barbecued ribs. Don't I miss ice cream? No, I don't eat ice cream. And you certainly wouldn't drive on the wrong side of the road in moderation, now would you? Could only have a moderate number of head-on collisions or whatever. Every time you eat those barbecued ribs and that ice cream, you are running over the endothelial lining of your blood vessels and, you know, your pancreas, and running over, you know, your colon and your breast cells and prostate cells. But the challenge is, there's a pretty big incentive to drive on the proper side of the road in a car, because the consequences of driving on the wrong side of the road are immediate and catastrophic. Driving on the wrong side of the road nutritionally, those head-on collisions might be 5, 10, 15-year roads. So how do you stay focused long enough to teach yourself to drive on the proper side of the road nutrition? Driving on the wrong side doesn't have this immediate catastrophic consequence. And so the analogy I like to use is kind of like, and having been through this myself and coached literally hundreds and hundreds of people through it, patients through it, it's like pushing a snowball over the top of a mountain. If you can get the snowball over the top, you don't have to push anymore. You start to feel better. You have more energy. You lose weight. You like the way you look in clothes. You get off your medicines. Everything just gets better and better and better. But the hard part is getting the snowball to the top of the mountain. And some people's mountains are really tall and really steep. So I think there's 3 fundamental things that have to happen to help people get that snowball over the top of the mountain. And the first is we need to help them find a reason to push. And I think we as clinicians come at this the wrong way, because we often come out of a paradigm of fear. Right? You need to get your blood pressure down, or you're going to have a stroke, or get your cholesterol down, or you're going to have a heart attack, or quit smoking, or get cancer. Get your diabetes under control, or you're going to cut your toes. People know that stuff. They might be motivated for a week or two, but typically it does not lead to long-term change. So a different way to frame purpose is to ask a different question, and that is, why would it be important for you not to have these bad things happen to you? So sometimes I'll have an exercise, I'll give patients 4 or 5 pieces of paper and say, I want you to write down the top 5 reasons you don't want to have a stroke, the top 5 reasons you don't have a heart attack, you don't want Alzheimer's, you don't want colon. Well, guess what? What comes back is 1 piece of paper, right? For my kids, my grandkids, my retirement. So I tell patients, whatever you're going to do in the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, today is the day to start pushing the snowball to be sure you can come. The second thing is lowering the slope of the road and the height of the mountain. And that's really systematically and honestly asking patients, what's going to make this hard? I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to shop. I don't have any money. I don't have a lot of time. I travel. You know, I eat when I'm stressed out. My family doesn't support me. The answers to all of those things, but you have to ask the questions first, right? And that's where Caryn, you know, like Caryn's programs really does a great job helping people overcome these. And then lastly, and again, this is an important aspect of Caryn's membership. You got to recruit as many people as you can to help you push this number, because we it's hard, and we know there's a ton of research now about the fundamental importance of social networks and support to support the change process. And I think and it's there's a lot of other little nuances to that, but I think fundamentally that's how you're going to help people get on the other side of this. You've got to help them find the reason to help them understand what their barriers are, and help them give them the resources to overcome them, and help them create social networks around change, whether it be friends, family members, like the community that Caryn's membership creates, online groups, whatever.
Powerful points, Dr. Loomis. I love the saying that greater than the fear of dying is the hope of living. Right. The greatest motivation. Right. I just want to pause and just acknowledge some comments here. Seems like we got some people really enjoying what you're saying. Nash Collins says, "I love this." My wife Angelica says the same. And Rosa Teb says hi. You guys remember, if those who are coming in a little late, if you have questions, post them in the chat. But I think it's so important to understand that we can change, right? There's an idea of neuroplasticity, right? Our brains are like plastic; they can be molded. What you learn, you can unlearn, right? It just takes time, and though it does take effort in the beginning, it gets better, right? So you guys have a program, a membership, I should say, that I think is very important, right? Very similar to what we do in our program too, is bringing people together, because we are more likely to succeed when we're together. So can you speak on that, Caryn? Like why do you recommend that people don't go it alone?
Support really is, in my estimation, the missing key. Mm-hmm. And the support is there for a lot of reasons, obviously to lean on each other, but also for resources, for ideas, for so many reasons. I opened up the Center for Plant-Based Living in 2019 because we needed a support system here in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And we had classes a few times a month. I did dinner parties. I had a speaker series. It was just in order to get people into these four walls, to sit around together, to share food, to learn from each other. And it was a great time. But I think all things run their course. And again, there was COVID. But in that time, this virtual existence really became so popular. And so I started doing a lot of online videos. And then Jim and I were actually speaking separately, but we were both asked to speak at a conference, medical conference actually, in Midland, Texas. And we're all out to dinner that night. And Jim and I were talking, and, we were just conversing, saying, gosh, we're getting the same questions. People are asking me, is soy good or bad? And how do you cook it? How do you use it? And I would tell them, the same questions would be posed to Jim, but in a medical fashion. Should I not be eating soy? What's going on? So we were getting the same questions, but people were expecting different answers because they were asking for different reasons. Yeah. So that's why we decided, hold on a second. Let me see, is there something like this on social media where a doctor and a chef come together and answer the same questions, but have different answers? Mm-hmm. And I did a quick search. There was sure. and we noticed, or we realized, no, there's no one, especially in the plant-based space. And not that we are plant-based, but that's really, it's such an overused term, and I think that people are kind of like getting they're just kind of tired of it. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're just talking about healthy foods, nutritionally dense foods, those kinds of foods. I'm cooking plant-based. We're just not like banging that home. I like to say more plants on plates anyway. So, so that's where the doc and chef came from. And then out of that, during COVID, I started a membership because I wanted to keep that, with virtual membership, I wanted to keep that that support system intact as much as we could virtually. Yeah. But now it's just such an accepted entity. And I realized, when people were starting to join from like Europe and New Zealand. And I thought, well, I can probably reach more people virtually than I can in these four walls. So I got to a point where I had to pick a lane. You can't do all the things all the time, right? Or you can't do all the things at one time. So in order for us to excel in anything, a couple of things had to close shop. So that's what we did. And now we're doing Doc and Chef.
Nice. And we're going to give people a chance to know how to join your membership and also, post the link to your YouTube channel. What did you say, Dr. Loomis?
I was going to say the other thing about, back to this community, one of the, I think the great things about Caryn's also a certified health and wellness coach. And so as part of membership, there's a monthly group support call. And then once a quarter I join, and we actually have to ask the doctor. And I can tell you, it's pretty amazing to be on these calls because, just the way the sharing the recipe, and even on the classes, I join all the classes, people cook. Everyone has the opportunity to actually cook together, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
So she sends out the recipe beforehand. And it's just so fun to kind of watch how people interact and, here's a tip I learned, or here's an ingredient I just found out about, or, and so I learned still from the people in the classes. And so it's so amazing to see how when people come together and share food, share their knowledge, and knowing it's a safe place, right? That there's no dumb question. The only stupid question is the one not asked, right? And it's a safe place. And recognizing that within this group, there are people that have the same question you have, or there's people that have had that question solved and are willing to share. So again, that creating that community around change has really been amazing to see it live in person, because I get to see it every classes and then the group support calls and all that. Really get to see how that works in real life. Yeah,
that's an awesome thing, man, to have you guys, a doc and a chef, come together. I mean, it just makes sense actually when you think about it, because food is medicine. So what better than to have a doctor on one hand and a chef on the other, coming together and partnering with this.
Right.
So and then I thought a question I know can be really controversial to answer, but why do you think there's so much hesitancy in the medical profession to adopt?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's obvious. Because I feel like, I mean, maybe if all our doctors were telling us the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet, right, or eating plant forward, right, minimizing meats at the very least, right, then there could be a lot of improvement in our country, especially in Western civilizations, when it comes to health measures. Maybe they'll all ignore us. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll just continue on the same. But I like to think that if we were all on board, we can make some real change.
But you're right, and there's a lot of reasons for it. Things are changing, by the way. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine has done a tremendous job promoting lifestyle medicine amongst practicing physicians, but also med students. They have younger med students who are interested in lifestyle medicine, interest groups, things like that. But there's several key fundamental problems as to why we're not taught this in medical school. So first of all, medical schools are judged by how many their students pass the board, the licensing exam, boards exams.
Yeah.
So they have to teach to the boards. They have to teach to those exams. So if nutrition isn't emphasized in the exams, then they're not going to be taught to it. So that's number one. Number two, we all want to practice evidence-based medicine, right? But who creates most of the evidence? Well, I can tell you it's not Big Blueberry, right? So it's Big Pharma. And so, medical school, we're learning about high blood pressure. Literally, they would say, yeah, it's important to diet and exercise, but we know no one can do that. So here's all the different drugs you can use, right? So that's part of the problem. The third thing is doctors who are out there already practicing, I mean, they're getting slammed. I mean, you're getting, you're seeing 15, 20 patients a day, and taking the time to really do a deep dive into the science and relearn, all of this stuff. It's hard. I mean, there's just not enough hours in the day. And lastly, imagine that you're a invasive cardiologist who puts stents in people, and you're the best stent placer in the United States, and your whole career, your whole reputation is built on this. And then all of a sudden, someone comes to you and says, "Hey, that's great, but you know what? There's a better way to do this, and what you've been doing may not be exactly right." I mean, that's who wants to hear that, right?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
So, and some people say, "Well, so it's nefarious." It's all about the money. I don't think that's the case. I don't think people are prescribing drugs and doing procedures just to drive revenue. I think it's just they don't know it. They don't have the time to learn it if they don't know it. The whole system is set up.
System issue. That's what it is. It's a system. You remind me of what I read in Dr. McDougall's experience, and I forget where he was practicing in California. I believe it was California, where the cardiologist stopped referring patients to him because they were on their way to getting heart surgery, and then they would get their consultations. This doctor, right? This random doctor, and they were losing patients.
Yeah. Well,
they were canceling surgeries because I said, "No, we can't. This guy's bad for business."
I can tell you when I first went plant-based, and I was in St. Louis still, and I was, I'd have patients come in, diabetics come in, who, they're A1C's 7, 8, they're on insulin, whatever, and they've got an endocrinologist. They come see me, and we sit down and have the talk. We coach them through a transition to a plant-based diet. They lose a ton of weight. I get them off their insulin, and then they go back and they see their endocrinologist. And I'll never forget, this happened a couple of days. The patient goes in, the endocrinologist says, "Wow, you look great. You lost all this weight. What'd you do?" He said, "I went on a plant-based diet." "How much insulin are you taking?" "Oh, I stopped my insulin." "Well, who told you to do that?" "Well, my internist." "You need to get a new internist because that's malpractice if he's telling you." And the irony of that is, the irony is that not that they needed a new internist, that they didn't need the endocrinologist anymore. And the second thing is, you would think, and this literally, you would think after the 10th or 15th patient that we shared came in who had reversed their insulin resistance, that they wouldn't call me up and say, "This is remarkable. I've never seen anything like this in my career. What are you doing? How?" I want, no one ever did that, and ever reached out to me to ask me what I was doing to reverse their patients' insulin and get them off the meds and pharmaceuticals. To me, it's kind of to your point, it's kind of mind-boggling. Like, why? Like, how are we so in medicine kind of siloed into this way of taking care of patients, this sick care system that we live in, right?
Yeah. And so that's where that part right there, like, it's one thing not to know of ignorance, right? But when willful ignorance, that's another. That's
right.
We need to hold our medical practitioners accountable for. Willful ignorance is totally different than
Someone asked me a number of years ago, a journalist, a very insightful interview I did for like Veg Girl magazine, or I can't remember. I think that was it. Anyway, asked me if I was mad. Was I mad that I didn't learn this in medical? So I said, well, no. To your point, unknown unknowns are unknown. I didn't know, right? Yeah. It wasn't anger, it was enlightenment, is what I experienced. It was enlightenment. What I should have been mad about is, to your point, if I would have known that and then ignored it. Yeah, right. Right. That's right. So,
so before we share how we can follow you, Caryn, you mind just giving a quick tip on, like, let's say, current culinary tip, for people who are trying to transition, or maybe they're just not enjoying their meals. What's some tips you could give? Cooking tips. Yeah.
Oh, cooking tips. Wow. I should have been prepared for that one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I will say that, I will say that I make a mean black bean steak burger. And that is, you want to make sure, if you're doing anything that needs binders, like burgers or meatballs or roasts or anything like that, make sure you have enough binders on that. So that's going to be potatoes, oats, flax meal, things like that. But then you also want to make sure, because potatoes, oats, and flax meal, for instance, don't hold a lot of flavor. So flavor it up. It's all about the spice drawer. Really add a lot of flavor. One tip that Jim likes to always say is that when you're buying ginger, it's okay if you overbuy it, like the root, right? The knobs of ginger. You can keep that in your freezer and it'll last forever. And it's even better if you keep it in the freezer, because typically I will use my microplane on it. So it's very hard when it comes out of the freezer, and you can shave it a lot easier on the microplane. Also, so you can freeze your garlic, you can freeze your turmeric root, you can freeze your ginger. Those are all great on the microplane. And then also freeze your citrus, especially limes, because we know that limes are really a little bit more dense and it's hard to get juice out of those little guys. If you freeze it and then let it defrost, doesn't take long at all, you get a lot more juice out of it.
Interesting. Okay. Good tips, man. We got to get you on for a full session on tips, man. That's
okay.
Great.
I can tell you though that garlic, that ginger tip blew me away. Because how many times have you bought some ginger for a recipe and you put it in the refrigerator drawer, and you went to get it a few weeks later, it's all shriveled up. Yeah. She goes, "Oh no, just throw it in the freezer." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Yeah, I'm using that tip. I wrote that down. Yep.
Yeah. Good.
The other nice thing about Caryn's burger recipe, and is it really is a template. It's like a Chipotle menu, right? So once you figure out beans and binder ratios, then you can change the beans and the spices and you can do a black bean burger, you can do a chickpea curry burger, you can do a white bean, Tuscan kale burger. So it really, figuring out the formula, if you will, it's a burger formula. And Caryn's got a lot of great recipes. She has like a salad dressing formula about, the different components and how you can switch them up to make your own salad dressings without oil, for example.
Okay.
So, she's really great about making things accessible and simple and incredibly tasty.
And if we want to follow you guys, I'll just show the YouTube link here. Actually, that's something you can copy in the chat. I know it's kind of hard to just write all those letters down, but look at the chat. The YouTube link is in the chat. Do you guys have a website that we could follow and maybe find a membership options?
Yes, probably the easiest one, because we have a couple different websites and some stuff going on behind the scenes. We have a new website coming, but that'll be in the next probably couple weeks. If you just go to thedocandchef.com, that will take you to the Doc and Chef page on the Center for Plant-Based Living's website. So the Center for Plant-Based Living now lives virtually, and it's kind of the umbrella above, or that holds the membership and that houses the Doc and Chef. So the Center for Plant-Based Living is this kind of big growing thing. And the Doc and Chef, Jim and I, are the personality, if you will, for the Center for Plant-Based Living.
Right. And we've got, there's other links in there in addition to the membership. Caryn and I have been blessed with all of the opportunities we've had. And in fact, in late August, we're going to be presenting on the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise to Alaska, which is a vegan cruise, actually. There'll be it's been going on for about 20 years.
Wow, that sounds fun. Okay.
Yeah. And then in January, we're going to be on a different cruise called the Health Optimization Cruise to the Caribbean. And those are really fun. And the Health Optimization Cruise is a much smaller, kind of an intimate group, all whole food, plant-based lectures. And the amazing thing is the average weight gain on a cruise is a pound a day. Most people again. We had several people on the Health Optimization Cruise last year who lost 7 to 10 pounds during the cruise, which is unheard of.
Counter cruise culture.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a counter cruise culture. Because they're eating this amazingly tasty whole food plant-based meals all prepared, and it was great. So people look for the Doc and Chef
You could also find them on YouTube, doing wonderful things. We're gonna have you hopefully on our channel again. We broadcast every Monday at 7 p.m. So if you guys are new to this, if you're watching us for the first time, make sure you set your calendar. 7 p.m. every Monday. Share this video with friends and family. There's a lot of people who are literally dying for lack of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So let's give knowledge to the people. If you know, then share it to someone else. Pass it, send it forward.
So the link you put there is the wrong URL.
Oh, is it okay? With the one I was showing, or
yeah, it's. I'm going to send it to you in the private chat.
I sent it to me there,
yeah.
so I can get the right one. That's always like to show it, just to make sure I get
the doc and chef, not the doc and the chef. It's doc.
Oh, right. Okay. I had the right one, but when you said the doc and chef or doc and chef, I think I pulled up the wrong one. So this is the right one.
That's the right one. Or you can just do the doc and chef. It'll take you here too. But that's
Let
it.
me make sure I get the link. Okay. So you guys look at the link in the chat. The doc and chef. You could just click on the link. It'll take you right to the website. Right. Okay. So beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even